All righty. Well, welcome to the 2:30 show. In case you're curious, this is absolutely on my bucket list of things I never knew I needed on my bucket list. So my name's Scott Shadley. I'm with Director of Strategy at Solidigm. We're going to do a tour to storage, and since we're talking about sustainability and energy management and things like that, I figured I would try to be as carbon neutral as possible, and I figured my choices were either ride a bike on stage or become a Matrix battery. I'm really not in the mood to join the Matrix, so welcome. And we're going to have some fun today and talk about power efficiency and how it impacts the ecosystem we're dealing with and what Solidigm's trying to do to help with that. So the rise of AI, we've talked about AI. I think if you put the letters AI in front of anything, you can actually get money from any investor you want right now because it's the buzzword. But this is one of those opportunities where you have a presentation that AI is either going to kill us or it might kill us, but someday it'll kill us. But all kidding aside, Solidigm has put forth a lot of focus and effort to do a little bit moderate view on the it might not kill us point of view. So the pace of some of the aspects of what's going on, you can see here 3 times by 2030 as far as power consumption. That's the consumption of the power needed to power the country of India. And that's just talking about coming soon. So we have a lot of issues that we have to deal with, and there's many different aspects of it. You have a lot of booze talking about how to cool it, how to push the power, how to process the data, but quite honestly, not a lot was said, especially even in the keynotes, about what storage can do to help with that. And so one of those things we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk through how every watt and every square inch makes a difference and what we as Solidigm are doing to help with that. And part of that is we've got this cool little bike set up that's not quite this one. It's a nicer bike. No, just kidding. It's a different bike in our booth where you can find out how much power you're generating. And by the time we get to the end of the presentation, I'll give you an idea of what my 15 minutes of fame will bring to me as far as power delivered to a grid, if you will, and how much it means on data transfer. So infrastructure efficiency is a very important part of what we're doing. And we have folks like Meta that's already said it's building bigger AI clusters than it can get energy to do with it. We know already that we're having power problems with data centers. For example, on the East Coast, 98% of the power that's going to the data center should be going to the homes, but we're redirecting that power and we don't have a way to backfill that power. We have transmission line problems and influence in the industry about how to build the better grid. So it doesn't just mean energy consumption. It means what else can we do to help with the efficiency of a system by either better managing the power, reducing the power, or even reducing the footprint, because there's only so many cornfields in Iowa that we can plow down to put up wind farms to support the data center that's going next to it. So lots of things are going on, and it involves things like rack space, weight, space requirements, and all of that, including the power. So in the grand scheme of things, you can see here, according to Carnegie Mellon, storage-related emissions are roughly up to 33% of the operational output of these systems. So we didn't hear a thing in the keynotes about storage, yet we're consuming 33% of the power that's being driven to those data centers. We need to find a better way to help with that and investigate ways to make that better. Any presentation isn't suited right if you don't, within 30 seconds, talk about 3 Mile Island and Microsoft, because we all love nuclear power. And since I grew up in Idaho, where the first city was ever powered by nuclear power, I don't glow green, but there are other ways to help with the efficiency of a system besides firing up massive nuclear reactors. And you can see that the most direct way to reduce that storage emission is to have denser, fewer storage devices. And we don't really tend to think about how to optimize all of these architectures and direction. So in a similar research study, Meta and Stanford University saw that the predominance was about 35%. So we've got a lot of work to do around what storage can do to help with that. So one reason that we have this problem is we have very low storage density because what we're using to store our data consists of hard drives, tapes, SSDs, but we need to start thinking outside these boxes. I've spent many years in the industry talking about new ways to innovate around compute, data, storage, memory, but one of those is we now realize that the GPU is driving it, right? We saw the Blackwell and how much power that thing's going to generate, how much space it's going to take. We have to accommodate for that space as well with our storage. And we can keep doing what we've always done, which is the brute force attack of just throwing everything that we have at it. Add another compute node, add another storage node, add another this. But eventually you have to find a new way to innovate around that. And so it's a little more nuanced on how storage actually impacts this, because you have to keep from starving the GPU. that sucker's expensive, it's consuming power, and yet you can't feed it fast enough without the proper architecture. So one of the things that Solidigm is focused on is how to innovate storage into the architecture without making storage a dirty word. And so that's kind of some of the effort that we're focused on with this particular thing. And as we're writing through this, we're going to spend some time talking about the data center. So you get Lance up here, and he's got to go faster. But it's a team effort. It's not just one piece of that pie. Lance doesn't win a race alone. The GPU providers don't win a race alone. We as storage providers don't win a race alone. So let's talk about density. For example, here is an existing architecture for 16 petabytes of data per GPU rack. We have 650 GPUs, 650 TLC storage racks, and 1,950 hard drive storage racks. That's a lot of infrastructure that I have to power, maintain, support, and deal with from a, how do I make everything work better? We have the opportunity in that same envelope to think about it from a different point of view. So I have two ways I can look at this. There's two different directions. I can stay within one certain envelope, compute power or power consumption, and how do I re-architect that? So in this particular case, you can see that we're getting to the same exact capacity, same exact compute, but we've shrunk the footprint. And we've done that by giving you the same number of GPUs, but we've changed from TLC and hard drives to QLC SSDs that are a very large capacity, 60 terabytes today, moving to 120 terabytes per drive in the near future. Well, what if we want to have some fun and scale that? Well, I have the existing planned architecture. I have the existing space planned in the data center. So now I can actually add more to that and scale it more effectively and use that space more wisely. So I'm not just focused on how do I get enough drives in there to hold all my data. I can actually add the GPUs that I need alongside the storage. So now we're at the same power envelope, same megawatts consumed, but I've added significant amount of processing power and I've added a significant amount of capacity. That's one of the effects of this power efficiency, carbon neutrality, right? I'm burning all the power needed to give you this presentation, and we hope we don't fall off the stage here in a few minutes. So we don't do this alone. As I mentioned, it's a team sport. Lance doesn't do it on his own. Solidigm doesn't do it on its own. So we've partnered with Ocean for one very good example of how to deliver a cost-effective architecture. How do we do that? In this particular instance, we took an existing infrastructure that's 4.41 petabytes of processing power and said it takes 10 racks in conventional architecture. Well, let's switch it up. Let's put in some high-density, high-capacity storage devices. They consume less power because there's fewer of them. And I can reduce the number of racks that are effectively used. So you can see on this side of your screen, our friends at Ocean reduced it from 10 racks to 3 racks. We're talking about a 70% reduction in physical footprint. And if you look at the power consumption, we go from 140 watts down to 22 watts. That means I don't have to pedal any harder to be able to do what I'm doing. I can actually take a break, maybe rest a little bit, say, because they're giving me the opportunity to do that. And it allows for the scalability. Again, those 10 racks will exist. Are they the most effective use of that 10 racks? And that's what the Solidigm storage product portfolio offers to our partners and our customers. And again, team sport, you have to work on it together. So another new opportunity is to think about the utilization. We talked about not giving the GPUs the right amount of effort to do their work. We don't want them starved. So the MLPerf storage, our friends over there at ML Commons came out with this storage architecture workload management, which we're a member of, Solidym's helping drive. And you can see here that if we take a 30 terabyte TLC drive from one of our leading competitors, who doesn't happen to be on the show floor today, and they claimed and have presented data showing that their drives can support in the different workloads and the different types of different types of GPUs, 1 to 3 GPUs serviced by each drive. So Solidigm said, well, you know what? Again, we're optimizing these architectures. We're not trying to do everything for everyone. Solidigm is a data center enterprise market player. And you can see our 61.44 terabyte QLC drive can drive 4 GPUs or 2 GPUs. We're getting an order of magnitude over the competitive footprint because we're not just building more of the same. We're building the next generation of successful products for the architectures that require them. We're not doing field of dreams. We're not building it and they will come. We're building what they need, and we're making sure it solves their problem. It does require some work. We have to play together to make it happen, but this is a very good example of how our high-density QLC solves a problem. So now that we've talked about the core, we all know we have to go out to the edge. So our good friend J.R. Tolkien, there are no safe paths in this part of the world. Remember, you have to go over, and I added to, over to the edge of the wild now, and it's all sorts of fun wherever you go. Why can't we have fun with this? We need to have a good opportunity to enjoy the efforts that we're putting forward, seeing our hard work actually solving a problem. We can only put so much in so much footprint. A friend of mine gave me a tour of a data center in Europe that was in an old church. You can't quite fit the same racks in an old church that you can in an Iowa cornfield. So the challenges at the edge are space. We have a power problem. You can only deliver so much power to some of these endpoints because the transmission lines and the energy grid doesn't exist to support that. And the serviceability. If I decided to pop a tire here, I've got some people here that could help me with it. If I'm at the edge, it's a truck roll. It's some other aspect of having to do serviceability. So optimizing your storage products, you can see it here. Higher, 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 better, stronger, faster, right? We can actually make that up into the right work for you in your architectures, and we have the ability to show that as well. So here's a small form factor view of it from a rack perspective, right? We're talking about a single server. We worked with another partner of ours, PKIO. You can see that on the Dell server, we have some NVIDIA A100 stored in there, and we've got, in this particular case, a MonAI medical imaging framework. What we did with this particular platform, again, QLC, high density storage, optimized to work with GPU architectures. We put some of our drives in there, and we got a 6-to-1 reduction in the power and footprint required to make that GPU system do what it needs to do for medical imaging. How many of you like to sit in an MRI too many times, right? We don't want to do that. We don't want to have to worry about it. And the machine's big enough as it is. You don't need the data center next to it to be larger than the MRI machine. They don't have any room for it. So the ability to put this stuff out there, do things in a more unique architectural way. It's not just the core data center, it's the edge. And again, it's about optimizing and partnering with people. So we have our friends at Ocean for the data center scale. We have our friends PKO for the edge scale. We showed yesterday in the executive session when my good friend Roger presented, talking about other versions of this architectural view of what it takes to get to these infrastructures. So if I have fun and go back right here and focus again a little bit, it's about all aspects of design. So when we see all these wonderful keynotes talking about we're doing this next great thing, Intel and AMD x86 ecosystem, we have to service that compute with some form of storage, and storage has been overlooked a lot because it's just been more of the same. Solidigm has finally decided to go outside that box and build a bigger box and make it more effective, more reliable, and more valuable to your system. So while I've been up here, as I've started to sweat and lose my breath, because as you can tell, I'm definitely not the guy that owns the bike, efficiency only goes so far. And if we do the math, and we didn't hook it up for here, but if you really want to see it happen, you can actually measure your own speed in our booth. No shaming involved, because if I'm going to sit here for 15 minutes, you can handle 30 seconds. I'm burning about 30 watts of power. In a booth, we had someone top out at about 300 watts of power in 30 seconds. So they gave it a good push. But in this case, I haven't generated enough data to carbon neutralize 12 terabytes of data transfer using a Solidigm SSD versus a traditional hard drive, which I would have only been able to transfer a terabyte. So yes, hard drives are here to stay. Yes, they serve a purpose, but QLC and TLC SSDs, when architected appropriately with the ecosystem, can bring some substantial energy efficiencies and drive better success for your products and your definition of your solutions. So we've partnered with quite a few of the server vendors in here as well. If you have questions, you're welcome to come up and talk to me once I catch my breath, or stop by our booth A9 and see what we have to show you as far as some of the other examples. Because we have a demo in a booth that's talking about power, specifically power states. So if I use full-fledged power, what kind of write performance can I get? If I reduce the power to the drives to save on energy consumption, what does it do to my data transfer rates? So thanks again for taking the time to watch me burn some calories up here under some bright lights on a bike. And again, I look forward to seeing you all around the floor. So thank you again. I'm Scott Shadley with Solidigm.